Welcome back to the Batty Girls Book Club podcast channel. I'm Stephanie.
And I'm Danielle.
And we are two chatty baddies who love to talk about books. If you are new to our channel, we post new episodes every other week, with the first episode coming out on the second Wednesday of every month, covering fun topics like author spotlights and so much more.
Today, we will be talking about our book club book of the month pick, which is Blood and Steel by Helen Schuerer. We want to thank everyone who voted in our poll for March's book club pick. There were truly so many good choices. Like, I was not disappointed if anyone got picked. We will be reading them all at some point. We hope you guys do as well. Let's kick it off with our current reads. Stephanie, will you tell our listeners, what are you currently reading?
Yes, I am so late to the game. I just started the Throne of Glass series.
Yes.
I'm so excited. I'm about 50% of the way through with the book. I am eating it up. I feel like I've seen people either love it or it's not their favorite. I don't know if it'll be my favorite. I'm loving it right now, and I just hope that that's a good sign for me for the rest of the series if I'm loving it so far.
I think it is. I definitely struggled. Like, it was slow for me to get into. And there were times where I'm like super into it, can't put it down. And then there was times where I picked up 6 other books. But I genuinely, looking back at the first couple books, I'm on Queen of Shadows right now. And so looking back at the first few, I look at it like very nostalgically. I'm like, wow, I love the female main character. I'm loving the world building. Like, I feel like it's going to be a top series for me for sure.
Good. Yeah, I'm hesitant on looking up reviews and people's
Don't.
thoughts on it because I will get I know I will get spoiled. I have already been spoiled.
Steph loves a spoiler. Just in case you guys didn't know, she loves being spoiled. I, on the other hand, will crawl in a hole and cry if I get spoiled on something because I love the buildup. I love not knowing. So I genuinely try to avoid that.
I love a good spoiler. I need to know. No surprises for me. So I'm reading that, and then also on the side, very, very slowly, I'm reading The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo very slowly. Like, I have barely made a dent in that book. It's a little bit hard for me to get into, but I feel like it's not my typical genre, but I'm giving it a go. Those are the 2 books right now. You said you're reading Queen of Shadows.
I am reading Queen of Shadows. I'm really enjoying it. I'm also curious to know what order you are going to read Assassin's Blade.
I'm doing Throne of Glass, Crown of Midnight, I think Heir of Fire. Then Assassin's Blade.
That's what I did.
I think 4th.
Yep, yeah. That's what I did. Okay, I really enjoyed that, and I felt like I was so much more invested in the main character reading those little novellas because I already knew about her, and it connected so many little pieces for me, so I highly recommend that. I know that's very controversial, though.
I was just going to say 2 things that are really controversial when you read Assassin's Blade and to tandem read.
The tandem read. I know. I haven't decided yet, but I'm thinking I'm not. Okay, and the other book I'm reading right now, I'm actually listening to, and it is called Listen for the Lie by Amy Tintera. This is I think it's a newer one. I saw some people recently that had like arcs for it. And so I got it on the Libby app for free, like pretty quick. So that was really cool. I heard that listening to it is a better experience. So it's about a story of a true crime. And then within the story, you hear from a true crime podcast that is talking about the crime and trying to solve it because it's been like a cold case for 5 years. And so it's cool because you hear like the intros to the podcast and then it sounds like somebody being interviewed on a podcast. So it felt really realistic listening to it. I'm a scaredy cat of true crime, just so anyone knows. Like, I am not a true crime girly.
Yeah.
I don't like it. It's too real. I will think about it too often. But this one I can handle. I'm about 80% done. And because I know it's like not a real story, but true crime in that sense, I'm like, oh, I kind of get why people like true crime because this is really interesting.
Yeah. A book that sounds similar to that's not true crime, it's fiction. None of This Is True by Lisa Jewell.
Yes, that's on my to-do list too. That's also about a like YouTuber or podcaster, right?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
And so you follow, the dynamic is the same where you follow like an episode that was recorded.
Yes.
I'm sure on audio it sounds really cool.
Yes,
Actually, when
yes.
you said that, I was like, so like a chapter might be a snippet of the podcast, and then it brings us back to the story and like uncovering what actually
Exactly.
happened. So,
that's all I'm
love
reading
it.
right now.
That's wild.
That's
I feel like
wild.
you usually have 3 to 4 in rotation.
I normally do, and you know what? On my Kindle, I'm currently reading Queen of Shadows because I have the physical book, but I was traveling and it was nighttime and I'm trying to only read when I'm in bed. And I was like, this is a thick book. And it's not even as big as the next few, but I bit the bullet and I got the Kindle version and I don't regret it. I read it faster. It's easier to hold.
Yes. I cannot read physical I held off on purchasing a Kindle for a very, very long time. And then when I purchased it, I cannot look back. Like, I was one of those people, oh, I love the smell of books.
Yes.
I can read exponentially faster on my Kindle than I can with a physical copy book.
I agree. And don't come at me for my font size, everybody, because I bust that font up. I'm turning that font up. It helps. It's fun because I have that whole setup that you've probably seen on social media now where you have the Kindle and it's clamped to like an arm, and then I have a clamp to the side of my bed, and then I have the page turner. Some call it lazy. I call it genius. All right, so let's get back to Blood and Steel. We love this book. I think we both love this book. However, we have not spoken about this book to each other. We waited. So that's another reason why we're feeling extra chatty today. We're finally able to talk to each other about our feelings of Blood and Steel.
If you know what it's like to read a book with a friend and like the pure joy that you get from sharing the plot and being like, oh my gosh, what'd you think about this? And then taking that away and not being able to share that moment. She took it from me.
This was Steph's idea.
It was brutal.
Yes, but it really hyped me up for this episode even more because I am so excited to talk about it. I want to start us off with a little SparkNote summary, our own version of a summary. I don't talk about the whole book in this. I'm still keeping it a little bit spoiler free, and we'll let you know when it's time to hop off. If you haven't read the book, go read it. You will love it. It is an unfinished series. I'm so sorry to all of you who have read so many unfinished series, and it's a little bit painful to wait, but there are already 3 out of the 4 books out. So I think it's still worth reading and getting caught up. And I think the next one's coming out this year.
It's scheduled. Yeah, I want to say it's scheduled tentatively for the fall.
Okay, we love that.
I think.
Okay, so let's talk about what Blood and Steel is about. Here is a little summary for you. Blood and Steel is book number 1 in a 4-book series. The first few chapters set the stage for readers to understand the world of Thesmar, the Midrealms, the Vale, monsters, sisters, hot war swords, and so much more. We follow our female main character, Althea, aka Thea, who has a fate stone which she wears around her neck with the number 27 carved into it, indicating the age of her death. This means that Thea has 3 years left to become a ward sword, and she will do whatever it takes to become one. There is one big problem with this plan, though. Women in this world cannot wield weapons because of the Daughter of Darkness prophecy that has caused leaders to strip all women of their weapons for fear of the prophecy coming true. Steph, do you want to read us what the prophecy is?
Bum, bum, bum. Yes. So the prophecy is that in the shadow of a fallen kingdom, in the eye of a storm, a daughter of darkness will wield a blade in one hand and rule death with the other. When the skies are blackened, in the end of days, the veil will fall. The tide will turn when her blade is drawn, a dawn of fire and blood.
Ooh. Does that stop our girl Thea from sneaking around with her Narvian steel dagger and seeking to bend the rules that have long been in place? Absolutely not. What kind of female main character would she be if she followed the rules? So our girl Thea gets the chance to fulfill her dreams and be trained by none other than Hunky Hawthorne. Yes, that's Wilder Hawthorne for you. Will Thea become a war sword? Will the veil fall and monsters take over their lands? Will Thea be wild for Wilder Hawthorne? You'll just have to read for yourself to find out. So all of y'all who haven't gotten a chance to read this book, now is your time to leave, please. Otherwise, you will be spoiled. Okay, first, can we talk about how this prophecy comes out and they're like, all women drop your swords immediately? Like, it seems so extreme to me.
I want to say it was a review that I was reading on Goodreads, because I feel like now this is my new thing. I've seen a couple TikToks on it where they're like, me reading 1-star reviews of my favorite books.
Love that.
I like to read the 1, 2, and 3 stars of books that I've rated higher, just because I'm like, well, let me see different, like, did I miss something here? Not going to change my rating.
Good.
Maybe down 1 star.
Sometimes it does a little.
Sometimes. I'm like, that's a good point. And so someone did say something about the fact that there was this prophecy about the sword, right? This daughter of darkness holding sword. Why can't they yield other weapons?
What about a dagger?
Like, yeah.
They're like all
anything.
weapons.
Just because there's this prophecy about one woman, like it feels a little extreme.
It does. It feels very extreme, but also very in line with fantasy worlds because that does
very
track.
Believable.
Yeah.
Very believable. I was bought into the plot. I'm like, This makes sense.
Thinking about the book overall, some of the things I loved the most were the relationships. I loved the relationship between Thea and her sister Elren. Although throughout the whole book in my mind, I feel like I kept thinking that Ren was the older sister because she definitely acted like the older sister the whole time.
I feel like the whole book she was acting as like the guardian, like looking out for her sister, and big sis has got your back. I got you. Like, pack your bag with this and that.
Yes. But that was kind of interesting to me. I was like, oh, I kept forgetting. I was like, oh, she is the younger sister.
I forgot.
Yeah, Ren is younger. Yeah, exactly. So that I thought was very interesting. I also loved the relationship between Thea and her 2 guy friends, Kit and Cal. I really enjoyed their camaraderie together for the most part until, we got to the end and Cal was kind of a pain in my butt. But I really enjoyed their relationship too. And obviously we have to talk about Thea and Wilder.
Tell me what you think about the 2 of them in all regards.
Okay.
Everything.
I thought it was interesting. The only thing we spoke about of this book is you did not like the scene where they like laid next to each other.
If you know, you know.
So the time they slept next to each other, but I was like, oh, that actually seemed kind of realistic, but it gave you the ick. I thought that was so funny.
It didn't give me the ick because of the, like, if that were to happen in real life. I think my criticism on that part of the book, it felt too soon for that to happen where the plot was. So, like, I feel like they were, I don't know if, like, enemies is the right word. They were kind of more, like, reluctant.
Adversaries.
Now. Yeah. And so, like, he's this, like, grumpy dude, and he has to bring her to see the king, and he's all mad about it, and somehow it's like, oh, they end up, like, sleeping next to each other, and it's like, oh my gosh, how did we get in this situation?
Yes.
He started off not liking her with a very valid reason. He was brought up to be this war sword, believing this prophecy and whatever. This girl, Thea, comes in and she wants to train. And of course that's against his belief. And he makes that very clear in the council room, which I did not like him at that part of the book. But that was his character and I respect it. And then I didn't feel like there was a smooth transition to get to the point of, like, she's so hot.
That's so true. We don't really get that from his point of view. Yeah, it was kind of like, oh, okay, that was the point where I realized, like, oh, he's kind of he must have the hots for her, He's got some feelings for her.
I feel like if you cut that scene out, I would have, I liked the buildup that followed after that. And, like, you can hear in his inner monologue, he talks about, like, how he looks at her and he's like, oh my gosh, she's beautiful. And she looks at him and she's like, oh my gosh, he's attractive. So, like, you're still understanding that they are interested and want each other.
I loved the forced proximity because, like, they had to be together. They had to go on this journey together. I enjoyed that trope. I love the grumpy man trope. I really enjoy, like, a slower build up into
Yeah.
some type of romantic feelings as well. So I agree. But that for me was like the starting point of realizing like, oh, something's going to happen here. And I love female characters, main characters that don't follow the rules. I love that. Like, these are the parameters put in place for you. You won't have any form of weapons. She carries a dagger around everywhere. You won't leave and go into the blood woods. You won't miss class. She does all of the things she's not supposed to do. You won't talk to Malik, and her and Malik are besties. Him and his dog, Dax. Dax was the star of the show for me.
I have a Dax question for you, actually. A question that I need to know. How did you picture Dax?
Oh, that's actually a great question. I pictured him as this like little wired haired, like curly haired, maybe like grayish colored, gray tan.
That's hysterical.
How did you picture him?
I have no idea, no recollection if there's any description of what Dax looks like in the book. Fang from Hagrid's dog. Like that, I'm not kidding.
Stop.
That is what I pictured the entire book.
So this is why I love reading, because you don't realize how much your imagination and creativity comes to play when you're like filling in the blanks, because not everything needs to be said. And like if we said, she might have described the dog in bigger detail, but obviously that didn't just like stick with us as well. But your mind comes up, even like character descriptions. That's you so still funny. Picture different variations of the same description. Yes. I love that.
And you can tell me if the person has white hair, blonde hair, brown hair, red hair. I am picturing them based on my own imagination. If you want to know how I'm picturing them, it's because I'm looking up fan art and getting spoiled every single time.
Back to Steph being spoiled. She's like, send me fan art. Send me fan art immediately. We're reading Powerless. Send me fan art without spoiler.
Truly. That's how I got spoiled on Throne of Glass.
Yep. Mm-hmm. You sure did.
I won't share more about
She'll
that.
She'll never learn. It's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I also, as far as tropes go and like who a good audience for this book would be, so I only read so far the first book in the From Blood and Ash series. Don't yell at me. I'm working on it. But I feel like this book reminded me a lot of From Blood and Ash. I won't spoil it for you, Danielle, because I know you haven't started yet. It just a few similarities there. And then I also feel like this is a nice introduction if you're like not ready to commit to a big series or a book that's 800 pages. This was a very, very nice, fast-paced, quick read. I think you and I finished it in like 3 days.
Yeah. It gives me like beginner to intermediate fantasy reader vibes. I feel like the first 4 or 5 chapters, the world building was a little heavy. It's a little bit more convoluted to get through, but she still did a beautiful job of like painting the picture of the world we're in. And then it gets like more dialogue and you're more invested in the characters. So I think it was great in that you didn't have to read. It wasn't a whole first book of world building. It was like a couple chapters of world building to get into it. Here are other thoughts that I have on the book based on the notes I kept in my little phone notepad, and they were random. Some things that I noted is that everyone in the book used the word or the phrase "the girl" so demeaningly, and I know it was purposeful, and it really, really showed that it was such like a gender divide in this world. We obviously know that based off the fact that one prophecy led to all women not being able to bear any weapons anymore or be warriors. Women that have fought previously for the realms that they live in no longer could fight. Most of the women that live in the fortress, they weren't always in the roles that they're in now. They were warriors. They were badass women who fought with swords, and now they're forced to do these other jobs, which aren't saying that these jobs aren't important. They're just different. And to be forced out of something that you love doing, you love being a shield bearer, you love fighting for your realm, that's really hard. So I thought she did a really great job of painting that picture of basically this like gender inequity that we see throughout the whole book.
Yeah. I feel like that's also a really common theme in a lot of these types of books. Like they're almost, they have that medieval type vibe, right? So of course women are oppressed and they're seen as inferior. And then I feel like it's a really common theme in these books to have the women kind of rise up and be like,
Yeah.
we did that.
And very relatable to the real world, too. I feel like you read it and you're like, oh, yeah, I could see that happening. So I think she did a great job of that. And then other comments that I had were related to when Thea and Wilder, we spoke about, went to see the king, because Thea basically had to like petition to train as a shield bearer. And eventually, hopefully, a war sword. And so when she's in the room with the king, this king has magic, and not everyone in their world does, but this king's line, this family line, does have magic, and Thea could sense it. And from that point on, I was like, oh, something's up, because I think it was Wilder who even made a comment like, what do you mean you could feel it? And Thea's like, you didn't feel that? Yeah. And I was like, ooh, something's up.
Yeah, there was a lot of foreshadowing about it, and it's very if you didn't catch it, reread the book.
It's there. I feel like that's what got my brain thinking, okay, Thea is not just like a normal gal. She ain't a regular gal. Yeah. Something's up there. And then obviously, like, as the book progressed, we learn that Thea does have powers, and her powers specifically related so much to me to Fourth Wing. I was like, lightning. Not in like a copycat way by any means, but it definitely, I was like, oh, little lightning wielding. Aren't we over here? Yeah. Violet Soaring Girl. Yeah. No.
I guess there's only so many powers you can have.
Right? I know. That was a cool one. And another thought that I had that I would be interested to hear what you think about. Yeah. I am curious, jumping towards like the end of this story, what are your thoughts on when the Reaper, during the battle, locked in on Thea specifically?
There is something that we're going to have to find out between book 2 and 4. We find out at the book that her and her sister are like the lost
royalty.
Princesses.
Yeah.
But like, do I know why them having that title makes them targets?
Or is it the power? Or is it her power that it was attracted to?
Right.
You know, that's potential, like a little light versus dark moment. I was like, oh. Yes. Also, everyone else in the story was kind of late to the game picking up on these signs, I feel like.
Also, in that scene with the Reaper, why did she protect Seb?
Let him die. Okay.
You're not killing him yourself. Let him go.
Let him go, sis. On top of that, speaking of Seb, was his last name not Bartho?
I was thinking of Jack Barlow.
Jack Barlow. That's all I kept
It's always the Barlows.
It's always the Barlows. He, was like the perfect enemy. Like, he is everything you want in an enemy, because you hate him from the start. You continue hating him. She saves him. You wonder why she saves him. And then he continues to be a pain in the ass.
Yes. And for no good reason. She saves him there.
Yeah.
And then when they're doing their final battle thing to become an official war sword, she saves him there too. Sorry, she doesn't save him. Was it Cal or Kit?
Cal wanted to shoot him down because of what he did to them when he put them into that cave and left them to die, which was like extreme hazing, bullying, horrible. I hated reading that. Was so cringy. I'm so glad it turned out well for them. And I understand why Cal would want to kill him. And so Cal's not the biggest fan, I feel like, of Thea right now, because one, he realized after him and Kit got kidnapped by Seb that it was basically because Seb was trying to get back at Thea for just like existing and being good at what she does. And then when he wanted to get his revenge, Thea stopped him again. So I can kind of see why he would be salty, even though I was like, okay, it wasn't really her fault. We should be mad at Seb. I get it.
And Seb is still alive at the end of the book. And he's not even grateful.
No.
I would expect at the end of that, it would be like, you know what? Handshake. Thank you for saving my life. Thanks for having pity on me.
It'll come back to haunt her. It always does.
So Seb is grumpy, whatever. Fine, we're moving on from that. Before we were talking about the foreshadowing with the magic, and then that we learn that the daughter of darkness, her name was Anya.
Yeah, yeah.
We know that Thea and Malik are buddies, but we don't know a lot about why. Now, it's possible this comes in later books, and I think also she might have released a novella. I might be wrong on that.
Ooh.
I'm curious if Malik knows something that we don't.
Malik 1000% knows something. Even to the point where he was like pushing Wilder to like look at these lineages. Like he's putting stuff together.
Okay, so like if he knows something, why would Wilder not have known something? I know that Malik is mute and he can't talk. So like is this just something that never came up until now she's able to fight? No.
I think Malik is just figuring it out. I think that's what I don't think it's like, oh, he knew the whole time necessarily, but also maybe
then why'd he give her the sword?
Yeah, because he did give her the dagger. Like he let her keep the dagger, but maybe he could sense it because he had powers. But then why couldn't why couldn't Wilder? Wilder isn't the most observant, I feel like, until the end, and then he's like, oh.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I definitely, it's obvious that Malik knows something because he gave Wilder that book, correct? That said, like, the different royal lineages, and that's where he put together that we think that the sisters are like the lost princesses of Delmira.
Yeah.
Which is where that battle was in the end of the book, which is interesting that it was in the same place. And it's an abandoned place. And Ren knew way more than we thought she did too.
Who were their parents?
Yes.
Was there some bad connotation with them? Were they powerful? Were they evil?
Yeah.
And then also, I'm very curious about Audra. Does Audra know any of this? Because she kind of advocates for Thea when they're going to visit King Artos. Like, out of nowhere, she's like, I'm like, does she know more than we think she knows
definitely
too?
Does, because she was older. First of all, she was a warrior, and she was also older when they were, abandoned and brought to the fortress. So that would have been when probably Delmira, when that city fell. So I think she does know more. Maybe she even knew their parents. Who knows? We're just making maybe maybe she is. We're making a lot of assumptions, which we love. Yeah. I really look forward to when we learn more, like when we can look back and see what happened when their city fell and see what happened when they were left at the fortress. I am so excited to learn because there's so many questions, and I know there's 3 more books and there's 2 more books already out, so I can't wait. I know, I can't wait.
I also I can't remember if this is something I glazed over or if this is intentional. Why is Thea the only one with a death date or a known death date?
Great question. I also had that same question throughout the book too.
Yeah.
So maybe we'll learn more about that too, unless we missed it, and then let us know. But yeah, I was very curious about that as well.
Because, like, I know there was reference that she had gone to, I don't know if it's called a seer in this book, but something of a seer psychic type of role, and that's how she ended up with the necklace. But I'm like, was that does everyone who's born in the mid-realms have a death date, and she just happened to find hers out? Don't know.
And I feel like the death date isn't going to come true.
Oh, 100%. And
I feel
also,
like something's up with that.
Yeah. I feel like it can't be common practice because she's wearing this necklace that says 27 and no one knows what it means.
Yeah. I agree. I don't think everybody has that death date prophecy.
Do you want to give me your review of the book?
It was probably between like a 4.5 to 5 for me. I wish I could give halves on there because I never know whether to round up or down. But I try to give the higher of the two, typically. Yeah, I have a lot of questions still, but I think it's because it's a series. So it's not like this was one and done, and then I would have been like, okay, we're missing some things. So I think she left like the perfect amount of like foreshadowing, questioning that makes you want to keep reading. I enjoyed her character development. I definitely want to see more of Ren. I want to see more of the history of how they got to where they are. I want to see more of their city that they came from, learn about their parents. Like, I'm ready to dive into that. So I feel like it was an awesome book. The pacing, I think, was really great. Like I said, the first few chapters were a little bit slower, but that was the world building. And then I just sped through it. I blew through it. Loved it, really enjoyed it. I liked the tension between Wilder and Thea. I loved when they finally got to release some of it. I thought it was just I thought it was a great book. What is your rating?
I also rated it 5 stars. Shocker. So I rated it 5 stars because I am totally a vibe reader.
Yes.
And like I gobbled this book up, like we said, in like 3 days it took us, which is really fast for me. And also, like you said, I'm genuinely excited to continue this series. It left off on a note where I'm like, I need to know what happens next.
You're not like, ugh, I have to read the rest of the series. It's like, no, I want to read the rest of the series.
I feel like it was super, super easy to read. It was super digestible. Again, like you said, the first like 40-ish, 50 pages were a little bit of like, what's going on? And then once you got the hang of it, it was good, which I appreciate. I already shared my biggest criticism, which was just like, I feel like it was advertised as slow burn. And I was like, this was fast and that's okay.
Yeah.
But I would describe it as a slow burn. I feel like the pacing of this book and like the dialogue, it reminded me a lot of Powerless. So what do you think?
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Lots of back and forth. I liked seeing Wilder's perspective of like the same situation that was happening. I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, I feel like although Powerless is more of the young adult read, I wouldn't say this is a mega spicy book. I would rate it 2 to 3, maybe like 2.5 chili peppers. Like nothing crazy. There's a couple scenes. In that vein, I feel like, again, we were touching on this before, how I was reading some of like the lower star reviews and people were saying like, oh, this plot is so overused. It's so repetitive. If it ain't broke, do not fix it. I'm a sucker for this plot through and through, and it will never get old to me. So I loved this book. Same. I genuinely cannot wait to read the next 2. And
starting tonight.
Yeah, starting tonight. I cannot wait, and I'm so excited to continue with Thea and Wilder.
Yeah, thank you to everyone who picked this book. It was such a fun first book for our book club. We can't wait for April's book club and to spotlight more amazing authors in the months to come.
If you like what we have to say and you want to hear more, please, please, please leave us a review and hit that follow button on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and subscribe to our YouTube channel at Batty Girls Book Club so that you never miss an episode. Also, do not forget to find us on Instagram so that you can be a part of the Batty Girls Book Club and see all the new content that we're putting out. Don't forget,
stay